Hey, welcome to the Teresa Lusk Show. I have a wonderful guest with us today, and this guest is someone who's going to take the time to educate us about national security, and we're going to deal with a very specific topic, specifically foreign terrorist organizations. And this next guest is Victor Avila. I have had Victor on a prior segment, and he is a candidate for U.S. Congress and a retired supervisory special agent with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Victor has a phenomenal story about some dealings when he was serving, that he ran into a cartel ambush. He was shot 3 times. His partner was shot to death, but there's so much more. This man is running for Congress, and I want to talk to you about him. So please help me welcome Victor Avila. Hello, Victor. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, I was going through your book and I said, this is something that really needs to be talked about, especially as we approach the 2024 elections. You're running for Congress, so obviously what you're doing is extremely important. But I want to talk to you about a specific chapter that you have on foreign terrorist organizations. Can you just briefly tell me, what does that mean?
Well, it's first of all, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a background. It's kind of hit the news, and people have been talking about it recently, but it's nothing new to me and to other other colleagues. But we've been talking about this for years. We've been wanting this designation of some of these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, so we refer to them as FTOs. And what this means is we would categorize and place like the Sinaloa cartel, the Cartel Jalisco New Generation, the Zetas, the Gulf Cartel, the CDN, Cartel del Noreste. Those main ones, we would place them and categorize them and designate them just like ISIS, just like the Taliban, just like Al Qaeda. They would be a foreign terrorist organization. And so there's this criteria that how do you go about doing that? Well, a lot of people don't know it's that it goes through the State Department. The State Department would be the one to actually do the actual official designation. And so there's a lot of struggle with it. It's not something that as automatic as you would think that would happen, because for some reason, it's Mexico we're talking about. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of hesitation, which I think it's quite the opposite. Because it's Mexico and because they're right next door to us and the imminent threat exists, we should have been acting on this years ago. They're not 6,000 miles away in the Middle East. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the criteria of the designation, first of all, we look at the definition of terrorism. We look at what a terrorist act is. And if you look at the cartels, and I tell you, because I put these slides side by side in presentations that I do around the country, and most of the times the audiences don't know which is which, because the cartels are acting and committing terrorist acts, not just in Mexico, but in the United States of America, killing Americans. The difference is they do it by all means, by violence, by shootings, decapitations, by counterfeit pills, by fentanyl, by methamphetamine, and the smuggling of human beings, the human trafficking. And so these foreign terrorist organizations, these cartels, which should be designated as such, sometimes are more violent and have killed more Americans than ISIS, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban combined. And so people need to understand. So it is a cumbersome task. It's not something that, oh, you take lightly. We just designate them as the cartels and it goes away. No, there is a big issue here. And I want people to understand, because lately, this is one of the biggest confusions. They think that if we designate these cartels as FTOs, somehow that means military intervention. And that's not quite true.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that the U.S. is going to go into Mexico immediately with military assets and take out the cartels, which, by the way, we'll talk a little bit about that because that's on the table.
Yeah.
But what it does do initially is it gives the federal government of the United States additional resources, and that's also resources from the Department of Defense, DoD resources, and also allows the U.S. government to seize all assets from the cartels, their money, their properties, their bank accounts, everything that they have around the world. And also which hurts the cartels. We know that cartels operate because of power and money. And so the big difference that I get and the pushback that I get is like, well, the cartels don't have the same ideology like, you know, ISIS. ISIS wants to kill us because we're just Americans, and they religious ideology and Western culture. Well,
and we're going to cover that for sure. I want to come back before you head there because I want to make sure we fill in some gaps. You're saying some things that are very important. This is why I wanted to bring you on, because there's an educational part here that's missing, that we don't get the missing pieces, especially that if they are labeled FTOs, then that means that we do have to use military force. And so you just said something that's very, very enlightening, really, that I think America needs to hear. I think it's wonderful. President Trump quoted something, and I want to read it to you, and I want you to just share your thoughts on it. I grabbed this from Time Magazine. It said, and this was President Trump, he was at the time candidate Trump. It says, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some I assume are good people. Victor, you have firsthand experience. I was reading through the pages, and some of the stuff is so graphic that it's hard to even fathom. So talk to me about this quote. Talk to me, because it connects to what you're saying, why it's important. You know, when President Trump, at the time, candidate Trump, made this comment, they made it to seem like this was based on racism, but you are a Latino and you were at the border. So connect these pieces for us, please.
Yes, absolutely. We all know how the left turned that quote into whatever they wanted, and they always turn it into racism. He never said he hated Mexican people, or he actually said the truth. He said what I saw in my 20 years of working at the border, and I still continue to see as I go down there, that we do have a lot of crime coming across the border. Not everybody is a criminal, but even the ones that are not, the cartel a lot of times have control of these people and will force them to do things that they've never done before. They'll own them and put them in forced labor. They'll make them sell drugs, especially the young ones, go into the community colleges and universities and sell the meth and fentanyl there. So even if they weren't a criminal per se, they're owned by the cartels because the illegal owes them money for the smuggling venture for bringing them into the U.S. in the first place. And so the presence of the cartels are everywhere in the U.S. They're here supervising and overseeing their operation. And by the way, not just in the U.S., but in over 50 countries abroad. And so that quote is true. And but the left didn't want to admit that, because somehow, again, it's Mexico and it happens to be our neighbor. Well, they're not being a very good neighbor right now. The president there has basically ignored for the past 3 years the violent crime that these cartels commit in Mexico. You know, the numbers are staggering of the numbers of homicides in Mexico. I forget, over 150,000 deaths, over 80,000 missing people that have never been found. They don't know where they're at, disappeared. And these are alarming numbers. And yet the president there does not want to acknowledge the problem that the cartels. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, he said that the cartels don't even produce the fentanyl in Mexico or the methamphetamine, which is absurd, because just last week, he put out a letter to China asking them to stop sending the precursors and chemicals into Mexico. So which one is it? But the problem here is that Mexico, I want to be able to cooperate with them, and we have an enemy in common, and that's the cartels. We're not the enemy, but Mexico immediately blames the United States for everything that we want to do. The first thing they do is throw their sovereignty in our face and say, we're a sovereign nation. We're not going to let you to come here militarily. Well, listen, we wouldn't have to threaten or talk about military intervention if Mexico was doing something about taking care of the cartels. They have a military too. Right. They have police, they have customs, they have immigration, they have very strong laws. But because of their corruption, it's limited them from moving on it.
Which is what's going to be my next question to you is, why aren't they doing something? Why isn't the president doing something about it? What is the deal there?
Well, corruption is the number one thing. A lot of people elected this president. He's a socialist communist. He has a different ideology. And when he was elected, he tried to become president for many, many years and was unable to do so. And then so everybody thought, okay, here's the big change that Mexico needs. Well, it turned out to be, in my opinion, probably one of the most corrupt administrations ever, because you can't ignore the elephant in the room. And in Mexico, which is it's a third world country, but you have technology, you have industry, you have oil, you have the lime trade, you have the avocado trade, you have a lot of trades in Mexico. And of course, the trade that we share with Mexico and Canada is billions of dollars. But what has kept Mexico from really surfacing above and beyond, and they could be a first-class country, is the crime and the corruption. And so you would think, well, we'll take them out, but it's actually been the other way around. It's the cartels that have taken over the government and are right now running a parallel government in Mexico. And so the influence of the cartels is heavily present in politics, in the media, in a lot of aspects, not just the police on the border. By the way, they have over 40% of physical control of the territories in Mexico. So imagine if an organization had control of the DFW area.
Right. And I read that in your book. I actually read that back in 2018. You stated 80%, that they had control of about 80%. Is that correct?
So it's the cartels control the whole country, 100%. But in different influence, but physical, like with armed men, 40% of the country. But they have 100% control of the country in their influence and their tactics. So they believe me, they run that country, and it shows because the presidency and the governments at the state level are not doing anything about it.
Well, which then brings me to my next concern is, how is it that our President Biden, how is it that the liberals, how is it that anybody with the ability to think is okay with these immigration policies? You said in your book, our current immigration policies are harmful in so many ways. Speak into that just briefly about what are those policies and why are they so harmful? Because I don't understand how it is that Americans, all Americans, regardless of which way you vote, this is a national security issue. This is a security issue. We're in Texas. For you and I, it's even worse. I get nervous. I already know that there is a cartel here. And so it makes me nervous thinking of our future. If you're okay, you're an administration and you're like, hey, open borders for everybody. Speak into that.
I get that question a lot, and it's kind of hard to think that they would be doing this on purpose, but this is blatantly done by the Biden administration. And you said the word, it's policy driven. It is, the Susan Rices of the world that have been behind this policy implementation in the last going on 3 years now of dismantling what was present at the border. And it has nothing to do with laws. It has nothing to do with Congress. It has nothing to do with legislation, because it has to do with policy. They just created and invented their own policy of catch and release, of allowing people to come into this country on a fraudulent basis of asylum, which we know that they don't qualify, and they just decided we're going to let them in and then see what happens. And this is the open border policies, globalization, that ideology that they believe in. I think the Biden administration is goes above and beyond just illegal immigration. They want to fundamentally change the fabric of our country. And how do you do it? Well, you bring people from all over the world that have different ideologies, that do not want to assimilate to the United States of America. They don't care about our Constitution. They don't respect it. They don't respect our laws. Our own administration doesn't respect our laws. Why would you expect someone else from another broken country like Guatemala, Venezuela, El Salvador, and such to then come and do that? So these people are coming here and bringing those countries into our communities, not wanting to be Americans, but wanting to function like if they were still in their home country. Chile, China, South America, Africa, and it's challenging because now we're touching local. We're talking communities. We're talking schools. We're talking healthcare. We're talking sheriffs, police departments, the criminal justice system. And let me tell you, and I'll tell you really quick. Yesterday, I got a report from a friend of mine in New York that a few people were arrested, but there's still a lot of outstanding. And it's this big international theft ring of illegal aliens, mostly from South America, committing high-end burglaries in upstate New York, in Westchester, New York, in Connecticut. And what they do is they go and burglarize all these places and they shift around. They go back home, deliver all the goods that they got and the money, and then come back and do it again. And they hit these high-end neighborhoods. And these are not only illegal aliens, some of them have come in with visas, but visas that have expired. And so what we call overstays. And so this is the problems that people are feeling it locally, but not, like you said, not just in Texas, New York, in Maryland, in places that you would think, well, that's not the border. Well, it is now, because they've reached every part of our country.
Yeah, and they're doing this all in the name of equality, which is one of the most deceiving things that is happening. Equality is a dangerous word. It's tossed around like if it's truly equal. It's really not. It's a word that is used to push an agenda, to push these broken policies to control. And that's really concerning to me, because when you speak to the Latinos, when you speak to the African Americans, and you do it through mass media, which we know is happening, all you have to do is make somebody believe that they're not treating you equal, which is where this whole, if you're a right-leaning person, you're racist automatically, which is why I brought up President Trump's, or at that time candidate Trump's statement, because I wanted to see, well, what does Victor Avila, Latino 100%, has to say about that, who's been at the border. So let's talk about the children, because I feel like this is falling on deaf ears. We know that there's so much sex trafficking, human trafficking, and where is the outcry for the children, for that?
There was, as a matter of fact, yesterday, a whistleblower in Congress talking about how the Biden administration is basically the middleman of this child trafficking, because that's exactly what they are. They're aiders and abettors of the human trafficking that's happening. So I want people to understand that human smuggling and human trafficking are two different things. The smuggling is what you're seeing a lot of. People pay an amount and they come over. The trafficking is the exploitation of this person for either sexual exploitation or forced labor exploitation. Those are the main ones. And when they get to their final destination, whether it be Miami, Atlanta, Houston, New York, it doesn't matter. And the cartels have learned, wait a minute, this human being continues to pay me. If it's a female, I'll put her in the prostitution as a prostitute, and she'll continue to pay me a lot of money. And if I have more victims, more money. And so it's become a billion-dollar industry with the human beings. The same thing with the men. I'll put them in forced labor camps. And then you talk about the children. Well, as horrific as it sounds, and I'll tell you from someone that's been there and worked these cases, it is very difficult to even talk about it. But what one human being is capable to do to another, but especially a child, is almost unbelievable. And sometimes that's what people don't want to believe. They're like, no. Don't tell me. Right. I don't want to hear about this. But this evil exists in this world where these children are being used in every which way possible. Sexual exploitation, child pornography, forced labor camps, sweatshops, you name it, or just to be recycled, to be used to be smuggled, to smuggle other human beings to come back into the US as family units. I've flown with men with a child that is not their father. I've interviewed them, I've questioned them, and you can imagine my anger and my helplessness inside as I sit on that plane. It's happened various times where I feel helpless, saying, how in the world is this being allowed by TSA, by the airline, by Department of Homeland Security? No one is doing anything about it. We're allowing this child to be trafficked into the US. There's no vetting. There's no checking of the sponsor that asked for this child in Chicago. No one's checking to see who the heck is receiving this child. And that's what I've seen. I've seen kids trafficked right next to me on airplanes, and they have these people that they're with are not their father. The mother's nowhere to be found. And we have tens of thousands of those around the US. So you want to tell me about humanitarian, about compassion? This administration definitely doesn't have it.
I 100% agree, but let me ask you this question, because I want to be balanced in some things, because I feel like it's not just been the left who's been responsible for this. We've had prior administrations and presidents who could have done something about it. Can you speak into that in the way that holds both parties responsible?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And it has to do with, so let me separate it here. Let's talk about immigration. So there's legal immigration and there's illegal immigration. And somehow, sometimes those two have been combined, and they couldn't be so different. One follows the law, the other one doesn't. But I'll speak to the legal immigration side of it. It's broken. I'm the first one to tell you. The legal immigration system is broken. And it helps. It doesn't help that it's broken, because it makes the illegals want to do it the illegal way because it's easier. You have a person, I know a lot of people I've seen that currently have friends that are doing it the legal way, and it's taking them 10, 12, 14 years to come in this country. And those are the ones that you want to come. They're vetted. They will take they won't be a public charge to the United States government. They're employed, they're professionals. We want them to be a part of this community, and they want to be Americans. That's why they're going the right way. But we cannot be with the bureaucracies that exist and the paperwork and everything for the legal system. That needs to be changed as well. And at the same time, I think would help if you fix that system, would help the illegal system to say, listen, you cannot be coming in between the ports of entry of the river. You have to do it legally at a port of entry, and the right way at an embassy or consulate around the world. And so it definitely has to, you're right. Both parties have had the opportunity to do it, and no one has actually come down and put and I hate this term, I'll tell you right now, I dislike immigration reform, because it's been used and abused, and it seems like a political football now. Oh, immigration, we believe in immigration reform. Well, both parties have had control of the sides of the government that they could have been able to put something forward with, and they haven't. But I think they need to talk to immigration experts, people like myself that have been down there, that say, listen, let's fix the legal one that will also take the burden off of the illegal immigration, and fix that. And it's all about vetting. It's all about exercising our rule of law. It's about law enforcement. It's really putting back the roles where they belong.
Yeah. So what's getting in the way of these steps that could be taken? Because we've had so much time. We've had plenty of presidents who came and went. We've got plenty of policymakers and lawmakers and everything. What's the real deal? What is really going on? Why is it that after so many years, all these intelligent individuals who are very, educated, a lot of them, and they've been in this field, why can't they come to a solution? What's going on there? What's really behind this? Because my goal is to show Americans enough. We can get on a program like this, you can get on any major network and talk about your opinions, blah, blah, blah. We want to know the truth. What's really going on behind closed doors that's keeping America from coming up with a solution that actually works? What's the real truth behind it?
The number one thing you're going to hear is labor, and cheap labor, and they're afraid that we would get rid of it. You have to be a realist, and you have to understand that there's a lot of people in this country working for very minimal wages, and a lot of them are illegal. Some of them might be here on some kind of permit, but let's fix that. Let's make those people come here. If you want to come here and pick strawberries for the strawberry season up in North California, well, let's give you a visa and a permit to do that, because we're still going to send the money back to your home country anyway. You're still not going to pay taxes. You're still going to do all. So let's fix it and say you have to pay your fair share, just like all Americans do. You pay taxes. You will come in legally. You will be vetted, and that's the key. We were going to look at you. We're going to tell you you're a good worker. You want to come and work, but you don't want to be an American. That's okay. We need you. We need you. We understand as Americans that we need the labor. Okay. Well, we need you. You want to come, help us. We help you. Help me help you. Right? The old saying. We could definitely do that. And there's a lot of visas that can be issued. But I'll tell you this. I would love to do that, but we have to put Americans first. Americans don't want to do it. Okay. Then we open it up to others, because I'm not talking about just the agriculture aspect of it. Everybody thinks about agricultural and the hospitality, industry. But I'll tell you the other industry, the tech industry, and the engineers and the doctors. All of a sudden, you start. Why are we getting and giving more opportunity to people from other parts of the world, from India, and they're giving out these visas? And our students and our Americans are paying $100,000 or more, whatever, to go to law school, to medical school, and then they come out and they don't have a job because we gave it to someone else from another country. So I'm also there. I'm also very, very aware that I want to give the opportunity to our own Americans that have struggled and have gone to school. But I'm also open to the fact, like, hey, listen, you have a specialized need, you have a specialized skill that a lot of people can do it. Americans do it all over the world. We can then pick and choose. We get to choose. We get to vet. Listen, you're a neuroscientist that we need for this and this and this. Why not vet that person and have them come in and help and be a productive member of our society and of our culture? It could definitely be done.
I believe so too. I mean, we obviously already give visas. So you're like, well, what's the real difference? But you're talking about the vetting process. And I think the vetting process is important. However, some people, even on the left, they run with that as if that alone is a racist behavior or act, which is, quite mind-blowing, to be honest with you, because I think it comes from not appreciating your country. When you don't appreciate your country, you don't really believe that your country is great, that your country can be even better. You're offended at all these things. It just makes you look at your country as if we're doing something wrong, when the truth is these are principles to enrich your country, to enrich the culture. I think a lot of times people don't believe when people who are conservative, like yourself, myself, and other people, when we say we want other people to come here legally to do it well, but we do want the best people. That's not a bad thing. When we build our families, we don't, our intention isn't to go pick the worst people to create a family with. This is just human behavior. What are some liberal messages that the media is telling the Latino community, the African American community, and our younger generations, and that are keeping them from voting in ways that would protect our country? What are some of those messages? You're not just another person. And I tell people, first of all, I consider myself a woman of faith. So that's number one. Number two, I consider myself American, and then a Latina. It's just in that order. I've never really been like, well, I'm Hispanic. I love my culture. I love my people. But that's not the point. The point is that I'm a child of God first. I'm here in America, so I love my country. But I don't like the whole race thing, but everything is based on race today, and that's how I can pull on your heartstrings. Yeah. So unfortunately, I have to ask questions like this. Yeah. But I see that our younger generations have been taught to completely see our country with disdain. And it is so heartbreaking to me. And I'm thinking, you don't have a clue. You have to get yourself out of America and travel to some other places. And I don't say that in a derogatory manner. I'm saying, try, you take a shower every day. That's not going to happen in other places. So we're training our younger generations to dislike our country and to almost have a hate for it. What can you say as a I hate to say this, non-white person to those who are told by mass media, well, the conservative party is the white man's party. And this is I don't believe that the right has it completely right. You've heard me say that even on the prior segment that we recorded together. I said, I think the Republican Party has some issues, some big ones. So I don't think they're perfect. But when you look at the parties, you can go, well, this party, it's a lie that we're not for equality. We actually are very much for equality, equal for you and equal for me, even if we disagree. So what are the messages that the mass media is telling our communities?
What the messaging is where the key is. The left has been very effective with their messaging in vilifying the other side, the conservative side. They hate the middle class. They stand only for the rich. And they've been doing this not last year. Now they've been doing this for 50 years. But where they started doing it is in the classroom. And they started changing. That's where they got it. That's why I believe very strongly in local politics and the school boards and yes, the right has awoken, and we're fighting that, and the CRT and all that. Yes, the critical race theory, we're fighting it now, but it's very hard to fight it when we just came into the fight, but they've been doing it for 50 years. So all of a sudden we're trying to undo, the sexualization of our kids in school. And all these issues that these books have been there. And we just realized that, in fact, our third grader is reading a pornography book. Well, they've been doing it for a long time. We just realized it. And so the left has been very effective in messaging. But so here's what we do. We have to counter the narrative. And the narrative is very, very hard to set for us. It's very easy for the left because they have the media behind them. I mean, whatever they say, that's the narrative. Well, I want to change that narrative. I want to place a burden back on individualism, on the person. Yeah. So you mentioned one of the biggest things is God, is family. I'm talking about very fundamental core issues that the conservatives believe in is faith, a two-parent home, pro-life, security. And believe it or not, that message needs to come across, and it has to come across every day over and over and over, and have people be in front of these young children like me and say, listen, I just grew up like you. I grew up in the public school system. I grew up in a very lower income family, but I was able to, what did my parents do? We had faith, we had family, we had community, we had involvement, we had volunteerism. We were part of growing up, and we had responsibility and accountability. Now, all of a sudden, no one is accountable for anything, and the kids don't want to work, and it's very hard to get people to work, and they question everything. Discipline, all these things that I think, at least it made me, and I attributed a lot to my parents. I mean, they're the most conservative people I know. They're the ones that taught me the way, responsibility, pay your bills on time, don't get in debt, all these everyday life, right? How to run your life, be clean your house, being poor and being dirty have nothing to do with it. I mean, all these simple things that really mattered and stuck with me as I grew up as an adult. And so I want to be able to continue those values. And so guess what? Those values happen to be Republican and conservative values, which, believe me, a lot of the Latino community agree with me, because we're the same. We're like, yeah, and you're right. It has nothing to do with ignoring my heritage and the food and the music. Believe me, I'm very much in tune with that part of it. But it's America first, and I was born and raised in Texas, and that's the way it is. And so it doesn't mean that I don't want to help any other people. As a matter of fact, the conservatives are known for being the most compassionate and well-giving people a lot
Yes.
more than the left. I mean, we care about these causes. We care about our neighbor. We will extend a hand and the olive branch to help our neighbor in our community. We want to do that, but we are now at a point where we must make a decision, and that decision for me is to put Americans first, put our school children first, have them excel in fundamentals here. And so you mentioned my run for Congress. I'm running for life, liberty, and happiness. And then, whoa, what a concept! Well, that's the Constitution. Well, that's what
Right.
made
Right.
our country great, is life, liberty, and happiness. And so, what does that mean? Well, it means you get to live a life, a secure life. Your local police department, your local fire department is there to protect you. Life, you preserve life. You defend life. Liberty, you get to say what you want to say. You'd be surprised, even in Mexico, what you can't say on TV, what you would say in public, and you would get arrested for it. In Mexico, we don't even have to go that far. So that liberty, and of course, all of that combination leads to your happiness of not just your life, but that of your children, which my parents were successful in. They wanted their children to be more successful and happier. I want my children to be happier and successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody would agree with that. So then you start blending, right? It's no longer about left or right. It's about one people. It's about one community. And if you think about it, we have more in common that we know. So this division in politics has really hurt this country a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the messaging, especially from the conservative side, needs to get stronger.
Yes, and you made a very strong point that I wonder if our communities, our parents, as I look at people, we get upset at the schools and the teachers, a lot of these educators, they are promoting things that are 100% unhealthy, ungodly, unclean, perverse, and of every level. But Victor, here's one of my concerns, is that I'm noticing that the parents are somewhat surrendering to that. They're normalizing some of this stuff, and to me that's concerning. And while that's not our main topic, I do think it's important for American parents, Latino parents here in America, to wake up to what's being taught, because the way that you begin to break down some of the security even in your nation is to begin to believe your nation is your enemy, and all of these things are things that are penetrating our country. So with that being said, as the 2024 elections are coming up, what do we need to do to make America safe again? And I want some real, what are things that people can do? One of the things that I sometimes get overwhelmed with is there are a lot of politicians yelling at, telling you what's wrong, but they don't tell you how to participate to fix it.
The solutions are something that I'm very, very focused on now. And you're going to hear me, it kind of productive, because I'm running for U.S. Congress, because I think that's where I fit in the best to be able to make a difference. But I'm a big believer in local politics. I think people like, well, do I call the White House? Do I call U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C.? No. Go find out who represents you on your block. Who's your local city representative, your county commissioner? Who's your school board member that you can speak to, that is around the corner from your house, that you can have a cup of coffee with and have a conversation as to who they are and what they believe and what they would vote for, because they would make some impactful decisions. Forget the state rep and the governor and then the federal government. If these people are, I'll take it back to COVID. The county commissioners and the city councils are the ones that determine whether your business open or not, whether you could walk into a place, a store or not, whether you could go to school or not. They are the ones that make the decisions, not the president of the United States, not even the governor in some states. It was the local governments. They have a lot of power, and you get to elect them. Well, I never voted. Well, how about you start voting and paying a little bit of attention? How about you go to a city council meeting, go to a county commissioners meeting, just first of all, listen, and you'd be surprised what you hear there, what you would find out about the decisions that they're making, about a new business coming to town, about a repair of a street, about local stuff that affects you every day, that you drive every single day. That's how you get involved. That's how you become aware of the community. Volunteer. There's so many opportunities to volunteer. I got that from my mother. My mother's, to this day, volunteers everywhere. There's so many opportunities to give back, and it's so rewarding to do it. Be a mentor to somebody that's a lower economic, a school district. That means be a mentor, get involved, show them what a positive impact you can be in their lives. That's how you make a difference, because once you do that, you will see and you will start recognizing all of the responsibilities, and you'll see the opportunities that arise just because you're aware.
That's right. That's right. That's great. Great insight. Great advice to give. Your book is Agent Under Fire, and I want to put up the image so that our viewers can see. This is Agent Under Fire: A Murder and a Manifesto. You got to get your copy wherever books are sold online. And Victor, you know, I was reading through this, and there's so many more things that I want to talk to you about. So I plan on bringing you back. But tell us real quickly about your run for Congress. How can people find you? Yep.
Yeah. You could go
to, where do you want them to get the book?
The book could get, you could go to my website, agentunderfirebook.com, or you could go directly to Amazon or Barnes & Noble online and order it there. And believe me, it'll be a read that it's very raw, very powerful, very personal. You'll get to know me. You'll hear my voice come through there. I talk a lot about my family. I talk about my career. Of course, I give the details about the shooting, and then the aftermath, the manifesto part that I felt I had to write about. Border security is what I know. So we talked about the FTOs and the wall and asylum and sanctuary cities, and you'll get a very good overall picture, especially of what's going on right now, because it's so relevant that it's going on. So yeah, pick up a copy. I really appreciate that. You'll get a good understanding of what's going on.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. And actually, I plan on having you back so that we can talk about the sanctuary cities and the border wall and all of those things, because these are things that, as we approach the 2024 election, Americans need to know this. They need to know what is really going on. We've got to open up our eyes by somebody who's been there, done it, and can testify to what's really going on. So, Victor, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.